The FBC has several different moving parts, and dangers can appear in all of them. The story does a good job of fleshing out the supernatural aspects, but also takes its time to explore the day-to-day office politics of the place. One of the most divisive examples of this is found in the Tennyson Report. In a non-official internal memo, it was said, "Not even counting all the weird shit we deal with, this place can be a downright hostile work environment sometimes." For anyone who has worked within these shifting walls, this sentiment is known all too well. Between a furnace that requires human sacrifice, an extra-dimensional clog constantly backing up, and mold threatening to consume the building, it is not an easy place to work in. But there are more mundane issues as well that can be found in any office space. A difference in opinion on how the task should be approached. This aforementioned memo was written by Security Chief Arish and is called the Tennyson Report Memo. The only information we are given is there is a document circulating the Bureau staff and Director Trench wants it stamped out. Trench has always been one to control information, but in this case, anyone who has a differing opinion of how the Bureau operates is on the chopping block. What could be such a heretical idea that these drastic steps are to be taken? First, we need to get our hands on a copy. Jesse finds one hidden above the logistics division in the containment sector. The report can be distilled down to two primary things: a belief and a call to action. Before reading it in full, let's take a look at the poem at the top. "So sad, so strange, the days that are no more." This is an excerpt from a poem called Tears, Idle Tears by the 19th century poet Lord Alfred Tennyson. The anonymous author saw fit to include this as well as title his report after this poet, so the poem must be relevant to the message. Tears, idle tears, I know not what they mean. Tears from the depth of some divine despair rise in the heart and gather to the eyes, in looking on the happy autumn fields, and thinking of the days that are no more. Fresh as the first beam glittering on a sail, that brings our friends up from the underworld, sad as the last which reddens over one, that sinks with all we love below the verge. So sad, so fresh, the days that are no more. Ah, sad and strange as in dark summer's dawn, the earliest pipe of half-awakened birds, to dying ears when on to dying eyes, the casement slowly grows a glimmering square. So sad, so strange, the days that are no more. Dear as remembered kiss after death, and sweet as those by hopeless fancy feigned, on lips that are for others deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with all regret. O death and life, the days that are no more. Lord Tennyson is speaking of an all-encompassing sadness, one that doesn't come from a single source and lingers on the edge of emotion. It is the lament of days that are long past, friends and family that go before us, and how the world changes. Like the seasons, the past dies, but memories remain. With this idea in mind, let's read the report. For years, the Federal Bureau of Control has been wrongfully forcing a philosophy upon itself and its people. The philosophy is known to you all as science. We all realize that the concepts we explore here are mystic ones, with arcane thinking required to understand them. Yet we insist on using words like paranatural and para-utilitarian to create the illusion of a scientific structure, a tidy little system. The Bureau is desperate to stand with the closed-minded cult of logic and data that has overrun our society. If a thing cannot be quantified, then we dismiss it outright. We live in an age that is openly hostile to faith in the veiled forces governing our reality. I must remain anonymous for fear of reprisal from the anti-esoteric bureaucrats watching us from their plush offices. The same bureaucrats, Trench and Darling among them, have been steering us away from the Bureau's arcane foundations for decades now. It is time we correct course. If you stand with me, share this message. We are not alone. Once upon a time, the human species was governed by superstition. Thunder was created by Zeus. Earthquakes were caused by an imprisoned Loki, as the viper's venom burned him and he thrashed in pain. The sun was a great deity in various cultures. As humanity developed and understanding of the natural world evolved, these superstitions fell to myth. The Tennyson Report makes the argument that some things should remain within the domain of the esoteric world, that faith and superstition should not be discounted. The Bureau attempts to provide a scientific understanding of the natural world by reducing it to a simple formula. It is a natural human response. Understanding something provides two primary benefits. You can control it, and you no longer have a reason to fear it. This is not innately a bad thing. However, there are some things that Dr. Darling and the researchers inside the house are unable to understand. According to the writer of this report, these science-minded individuals will reject any ideas that cannot be quantified, even if these actions are found to work and provide improved safety to the staff. Examples of this are given in-game by the author of the Tennyson Report. That's right, as a result of some dialogue in the AWE DLC, we know exactly who wrote it.
Are you a cat person? I don't think I ever asked. You seem like one, though. You'd like Alfred. He's very proper. Really carries himself well, you know? I named him after my favorite poet.
Langston's cat Alfred is named after his favorite poet, Lord Alfred Tennyson. His usage of the poem Tears, Idle Tears is his way of lamenting that a world of faith and magical thinking has been lost. Looking back on his conversations, it makes a lot of sense that Langston is the author.
No one knows the Panopticon collection better than me. I'm, close to them, in a way.
How do you keep the altered items under control?
It depends on the item. Each one has different needs. Ritualistic touches go a long way. Singing to them.
Did he say
Flipping the
singing?
lights 3 times, that sort of thing. It's not superstition if it works.
We define superstition as a belief or practice considered by non-practitioners to be irrational or supernatural. As he puts it, it may be irrational from a scientific perspective that flipping the lights on 3 times would make an altered item behave. But if it works, what difference does it make? Within the setting of control, any method that makes the place safer should be considered. The debate between the esoteric view of the world and the scientific understanding is something we see occur throughout the history of the oldest house. A great example is the fan procedures document that details the 3rd ever altered item obtained by the Bureau. The oscillator is a floor fan that sucks the oxygen out of the surrounding area. The top of the page states that this document has been altered per Archival Mandate 8A. This documentation mandate is done with the intention to remove any and all concepts that relate to superstition or magic. Before this mandate was put into effect, altered items were housed in the Possessed Object Gallery. Now it is the Panopticon. In essence, these two places are the same thing, a location to house them. However, the scientific mode of thought would not permit the ideas of possession to be allowed into the official documents, as it goes against understood science. On top of this, instead of using the term paranatural force, older documents use the word thaumaturgy. This word means the capability of a magician to work magic, and as such, these magicians or miracle workers were called a thaumaturge. As Langston mentions in the Tennyson Report, the current Bureau standards use the term para-utilitarian instead. So if there is a faction of the FBC that are rigid in their scientific explanation and another that is firmly rooted in esoteric thought, which is wrong and which is right? From my perspective, both are right, but not always. One way to look at it is the general similarity to how the left and right hemisphere of the brain operate. The corpus callosum is a bridge of neurons between the logical left brain and the emotional right brain. Both perceive reality, but in different ways. Men have fewer connections, which generally leads to a stronger but more polarized way of thinking. Women have more connections, allowing for a more balanced perspective. In regards to the gap between science and superstition, there are ways to strengthen the bridge. We first need to determine which superstitions work and which do not. If they do not work, then they are indeed irrational. However, if, as Langston states, they do work, then it is not irrational to keep practicing these rituals. The esoteric thought in the Tennyson Report is concerned with whether something unexplainable works or not. Science is concerned with why these actions work. The trouble is the Bureau has a habit of seeing rituals that keep the altered items under control and reject them as they cannot understand why it works. They cannot accept some things are outside the realm of science as we know it. However, Emily informs Jesse that sometimes new fields of science are developed to solve this problem. If a rational mind cannot understand something, it may mean that we do not have the instruments required to understand what we are looking at. The world of bacteria and blood cells were a mystery to mankind until the late 16th century, when the first microscope was invented. The science of how rituals and consciousness affect these altered items is not something that can be measured, at least not yet. Until new fields of science are developed and new instruments are created to measure these forces, it may be in the Bureau's benefit to accept the esoteric beliefs that the Tennyson Report and its followers practice. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like, as it really does help out the channel. If you would like updates on new uploads, feel free to subscribe or follow me on Twitter. Have a good day, and peace be with you all.